Hi, welcome back to Rambling Roxy's Adventures Through History. We're going to continue with Women's History Month, and to be honest, I could do a new episode a day for years talking about all the cool people, all the cool women from Ohio that went on to do fantastic things. And one day I just might, but that's not going to be today because there's a lot of women to get through and we don't have that much time this month. It's running out. However, I am going to focus on a woman who plays an important role in aviation history, and that woman is Jerrie Mock. As you know, Ohio is first in flight and has many famous pilots and astronauts. Ohio is also home to the first woman to fly solo, that means alone, around the world, and she is named Jerrie Mock. She soared her way into the history books in 1964 when she completed her journey around the world. Sounds kind of fun. I would like to fly around the world. I'd like to do it a little bit differently though. Jerrie, or Geraldine Mock, was born in Newark, Ohio on November 22nd, 1925. Her father helped spark her interest in flying at 7 years old when they flew in a Ford tri-motor airplane. Girls weren't really encouraged to be in aviation during that time period or to do a lot of other things or work outside the home. So it was kind of unusual that she got to have this experience and be encouraged to continue her flying interest. I think that's kind of a testament to her family. But that didn't deter Jerrie at all. She wanted to continue on. And she was the first girl in her engineering class. So never feel like you can't go and blaze your own path, because even though Jerrie wasn't really encouraged by society at the time to follow her dreams and passions, she still stuck with it and managed to not just continue in aviation, but she did quite a few things, as we'll go on to tell you about. She attended Ohio State University, but left to marry Russell Mock in 1945. She went on to have 3 children and was nicknamed the Flying Housewife at the time. She also loved Amelia Earhart as a child and wanted to follow in her footsteps. I understand this because we really like Amelia Earhart in our household too, which is why we named our daughter after her. Let's talk a little bit more about, now that we learned a little bit about Jerrie's history and past, we're going to talk a little bit more about her historic flight because it was quite the undertaking of the time. Which was actually kind of almost a race of sorts. I know, a race around the world. Interesting. Still at this time period, there had not been a woman to fly solo around the world. There had been a few men to do it, but there hasn't been a woman. And there really weren't that many people who completed this monumentous task anyways. So this was kind of a race between her and Joan Smith. Joan was attempting to follow Amelia Earhart's route around the world, and she left from San Francisco. While Jerrie started her trip around the world right here in Columbus, Ohio, in her Cessna 180 named Spirit of Columbus, Charlie for short. I kind of like that nickname. She started on March 19th in 1964, and the media followed the details of the race, and the round-the-world flight took 29 days. Can you imagine? That's almost a month, right? It's quite a long time to be flying around the world. And it covered 22,860 miles. And it had 21 stops. I know, we kind of get annoyed when we have one layover. And we have a nice airport with all kinds of meals and places, you know, and air conditioned. But that wasn't quite how her journey was. She wasn't necessarily flying from fancy airport to fancy airport. And as you can see in the pictures, the Cessna 180 was not a huge jumbo jet. The small planes could really only carry so much fuel, so they needed to stop frequently to fill up. And because the plane was so small as well, she also couldn't have that much food, water, and everything else on it, so she had to make stops to fuel herself up as well. In her book, 3-8 Charlie, she talked about what her journey was like, which I'm sure was both terrifying and exhilarating. She flew over and stopped in Morocco. One of the towns was Casablanca. Saudi Arabia, where she shocked the crowd as a woman aviatrix. where women were only recently are allowed to drive, let alone do much else. And she flew over Vietnam where war was taking place, and she thought it was so interesting that she was flying in such a peaceful airspace when below her there was a horrible war going on. And she also flew over the Azores, Cairo, Calcutta, and in Egypt, she kind of made an emergency landing in Egypt, and she landed on a military base by accident. Oops. And that kind of caused some problems, and they weren't sure what to make of a plane landing on a military base that wasn't cleared to do so. And she was met with guns and a lot of people not being so friendly. But once they figured out who she was and what she was trying to do, and that she wasn't planning to attack Egypt with, her single and, herself, they went ahead and they helped her get over to the international airport and continue along her journey. That wasn't the only snag she had in her journey, though. She also had to deal with bad weather, such as big storms, which can be really difficult in a small plane. I know if you've ever flown in a plane and you've flown into turbulence and had the plane shaking, it can be quite scary. It was even more scary back in those days because they had less instruments to help them, and it was such a small plane, it's more affected by the weather. There were also radio problems, where she couldn't always communicate with the ground, and brake problems. Oops. But she managed to make it through all of that and overcame all those obstacles, and she landed back in Columbus on April 17th in 1964, beating Joan Smith by a little bit of time in the round the world race that kind of accidentally happened. She also went on to set several other aviation records from 1964 to 1969, as if flying solo around the world wasn't enough. She also has over 20 awards, and if you want to visit some places to honor her accomplishments and learn more about her, you can see a statue of her in Newark, Ohio. The statue is in the courtyard of the Works Museum and was more recently added, and a great place to check out. There's someplace else that you can go and you can actually see her plane. You can see the Spirit of Columbus, her Cessna 180, at the National Air and Space Museum in Virginia. This is not Ohio, I know, but I'm still excited to go see this plane because I would like to see what this plane was like that took her on this whole round the world journey. I still haven't flown around the world in a jet yet, so I'm super impressed she managed to do this in her Cessna. Thank you for learning more about one of Ohio's famous women, and I can't wait to tell you more about some other famous people that we have that did some amazing things. Maybe one of these days, that'll be you. Thanks for listening.